We are all set. How to make this here? And you have 30 minutes.
Good afternoon. My name is Kyeonghun Joo. I'm a PhD student. I'm sorry, is it working? Yes, I'm sorry. I'm a PhD student at the University of Siena, and I appreciate the opportunity to present my research today. And actually, it's my first time to present at an academic workshop. And I happen to be the first presenter, so I'm feeling nervous and excited at the same time. So with this, I will begin my presentation. So the title of my early stage research is a structural consistent analysis of ECB interest rate transmission in Germany and Italy, a four periphery perspectives. So I will outline today's presentation. I will start with research questions, followed by relevant literature, contribution of my research, and I will provide an overview of my data that I have compiled so far. And I will conclude with next research steps and expected results. And my research includes three main questions under the ECB's conventional monetary policy. First, how do the economic impact of interest rate changes differ between Germany as a core and Italy as a periphery? Second, how differently do monetary policy changes affect economic agents? Lastly, what are the projected impacts of interest rate changes within and across the country? So essentially, I want to see how changes in interest rates as a single policy tool could provide different results depending on different economic characteristics of each country. And it is well known that the main channel of monetary policy transmission mechanism, namely interest rate, credit, asset prices channels are all related to interest rate. And to elaborate, ECB set the policy rate, and money itself is endogenously created by bank lending in the post-Keynesian perspective. And also interest rate directly influence the behavior of economic agents. For instance, firms adjust their investment decision, household respond through borrowing and consumption, banks manage their liquidity and reserves, governments also face changes in their borrowing condition too. And under uncertainty, interest rate, under uncertainty, interest rate also a reference tool for decision making. For instance, economic agents use them to evaluate future risk or cost and risk returns, etc. So while interest rates initiate this transmission effect, but the outcome varies depending on the country. So to understand this heterogeneity, we can revisit optimum currency area theory, which guided the foundation of economic and monetary union. According to Mendel, it is a single currency works best when countries meet a certain condition, which are free labor and capital mobility, wage and price flexibility, and economic cycle synchronization. But later on, many research began to question about whether one-size-fits-all monetary policy is really appropriate. For instance, Benassi and Gefang show general symmetric reaction in GDP, output, and inflation in 16 European countries, while Briere and Pagliari find a divergent economic performance due to country-specific characteristics, such as different banking system and sector composition. Corsetti and others also find that financial variables may move together, but heterogeneity remains strong in consumption, housing, and labor market. And in the context of economic cycle synchronization, many researchers have focused on core periphery divide. Some studies by Yomi, Ian Green, Funkholt, Weber show decreasing upper synchronization. In contrast, Frankel and Vector show a higher curve movement in business cycle, meaning that a greater symmetry of shocks with the same currency union. Another line of research showed that after the financial crisis, core countries such as France, Germany, and Austria became more synchronized with each other, while peripheral countries such as Italy, Portugal, Greece became less synchronized with the core. And this study also highlights that the amplitude of business cycle differed depending on across the country, which means that even countries share a common cycle, they still need different monetary policy stance. So all these are the findings of heterogeneous effects remain mixed, and those researchers are largely driven by mainstream economic approach, while macroeconomic research using the SFC approach is growing rapidly. Many of works have been theoretical. An increasing interest fully empirical and data-based data-driven models has gone hand in hand with greater complexity. Even so, there are country-specific SFC models for Denmark, France, Italy, Vietnam, Greece, UK, and others. And thankfully, those research are conducted by authors who mostly attending this workshop today, even if there is no name in this slide. And according to Jeja and Jeja, there are two ways to build an empirical SFC model. One is a theory-driven approach. So it's starting from a theoretical foundation and calibrate it with data. The other is a data-driven model. So the model is directly driven by the national account data. So what is still missing in the literature is comparative and empirical SFC framework that captures cross-country symmetry. So this study aims to build an empirical SFC model for Italy and Germany. And as a German empirical SFC model has yet to be developed, so it would be one of the novelty in this research and simulate the symmetrical effects across two countries and across economic agents and highlight core periphery symmetry. So now I'll move on to an overview of data like compiled so far. In the main feature slide, rather than presenting the overall characteristic of the entire project, I would like to focus a few key features of data that I'm about to introduce right now. So a general set of economic agents include 5 sectors: household, non-financial firm, banks, government, and the rest of the world. And I included central banks to better capture the purpose of this research. And the national account data are from OECD. And I plan to add another variables such as fixed capital interest and interest rates from ECB, Eurostat, AMECO, and other. And I'm following Pasarela's work in 2017 to achieve full accounting matrices. And in the balance sheet, a loan is disaggregated into housing and corporate loan based on monthly stock data. So I will explain it shortly. So you may not be able to see the table in detail clearly, but let me explain how it shows. So on the right side, in the transaction flow matrix by Pasarela, for Italy in 2015, net lending position is calculated by first GDP and total production, next total transfer wages, taxes, subsidy, and dividend, followed by acquisition less consumption of non-produced, non-financial asset, plus tax less subsidy on products. So it gives the net lending position of and which is compared to net rendering position reported from the data. And then as you can see below, the total by sector, the last column is close to 0, which means that flow consistency is achieved. And then I follow the same procedure to achieve the flow consistency, even if I use the different data source. And after consistency is achieved for a single year, I plot the differences between computed net rendering and reported net rendering to check the flow consistency achieved from throughout the period from 2000 to 2024. And the results are shown in the following figures. And actually you can see the result, the differences remain below 0.2 or 3 millions, which is a high degree of consistency in Italy. And I'm not sure if you can see the red line, but it's Germany. In the first, I thought that it's something wrong because the differences are all 0. But I think it's because the Italian data are introduced 1 decimal places, while the German data are reported without decimal. So that is the reason. So afterward, in terms of stock consistency, I made the balance sheet in Italy for 2015. So the rows represent asset, liability, net by sector, and the columns represent all financial assets. In the table, other financial assets include F1 gold and F7 financial derivatives and F8 other account receivable or something. And F3 debt is split into bills and bonds, and F4 loans are disaggregated as mentioned before. But stock data are normally reported at the end of the year. But for the monthly stock data, I used the December value to represent the end of year stock. I'm not sure if this way is precise way to choose it, but yeah. And then also, lastly, calculate net worth and reported net worth compared. And then I didn't add the column, but the data are consistent each other. So I consider that the consistency is also achieved. And then afterward, I also plot the differences from 2000 to 2024. And then the differences are generally consistent, even there is a peak in 2016 for non-monetary financial institution, but still the value is trivial in terms of the share of GDP. So I think that would be okay. And the German graphs is also more or less the same. So I consider flow consistency and stock consistency are achieved. And afterward, next research steps will be to find subgroup data available for financial cooperation sector in the transaction flow matrix. As you may realize, there's no central bank sector in the TFM. So I'm still trying to find the appropriate data for it. And then next in the TFM, flow variable that are not essential for my study or that account for relatively small share of GDP will move to registered term for simplicity. And then this idea is inspired by Adam George. The paper name is something SFC approach, a step-by-step SFC model, a step-by-step approach in 2025 November. And afterward, I will also build stock flow consistency with depreciation, fixed capital, and flow fund, etc. And aside from the data, I will build behavior equation, test stationary estimate parameters, and validate a model. And in terms of behavior equations and parameter, I'm flexible on using same behavior equation, but with the different parameter for Italy and Germany. But as my research is pursuing empirical driven model, so I'm also thinking of having different behavior equation, especially for capturing the different financial structure between two countries, and robustness checked by changing the variable parameter and policy scenario under the different interest rate policy. I'm sure it's too early to expect the result, but what I'm expecting is that Italy face sharper decline in output or investment than Germany, and households and firms in Italy are more sensitive due to higher debt level and more constrained credit condition. And lastly, monetary tightening could widen the existing structural gap between Germany and Italy. So to sum up, one single interest rate policy benefit unintentionally the core, while disadvantaging the peripheral countries. So as I mentioned, this is the early stage research, so I would appreciate any comments or feedback you may have. Thank you so much for your attention.
So, good morning to everyone. Great to be here for the third year in a row. Thank you so much, Kyeonghun. Did I pronounce it correctly? Kyeonghun?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much for a very interesting presentation. So I also read the proposal, and it seems a lot of work. So you want to make two models, actually. So I guess this is the project for your world thesis. So out of it, I think my comments will be more on like a long-term planning of your PhD project. So up to now, you say you're interested in studying how monetary policy affects countries heterogeneously. So how ECB policies may have different effects in Italy or in Germany. And to do so, you want to build two empirical models, which is a huge task. So my first comment and suggestion will be to think a bit more about the structure of the thesis. So maybe it could be more simpler from one point of view, also manageable for you to do it in a 3 years time. That in Siena, the first year is just classes. So in the end, you have 2 years and a half for doing your whole PhD project. So my suggestion is to start with a theory model. So start with either a two-country model on the European case, which is not that a complex model because you have just one central bank for both countries. You have limits on fiscal policy for both countries, so you can make a number of assumptions, and then you can have a first chapter, theory model, simple model with two countries, and study from there. And you can use all the assumptions. So here, on the theory model, you can do all the stationarity testing that you want. You can make a lot of assumptions. You can have different kind of exercises and see from a theoretical point what is your expected outcomes in terms of differential impacts of monetary policy. Then you can go empirical. But to go empirical, I guess that, again, my main comment is try to make it as simple as possible. So I guess that the best thing would be to simplify your balance sheet, for example, because as of now, I see a lot of assets. Do you really need all these assets to study ECB monetary policy? Not for sure. Do you need to have derivatives? No, you can have a residual category where you throw all the stuff that you're not super interested into. And this will also simplify your transaction margin. Of course, the less asset, less transaction related to those assets. And this will simplify a lot your model design. And finally, I have a question which is more, so why are you using OECD data and not just Eurostat? Second question related to data, why are you using monthly statistics for loans? I really don't get it because you have from Eurostat both quarterly and annual financial accounts. They have a very large detail, so not so sure that you need to go with other sources. Finally, on the central bank. So, yes, in Eurostat data, you do not have explicitly, for example, the transaction related to the central bank, because it is aggregated within the financial sector. But you can use data, for example, for Italy, the Bank of Italy publishes its own balance sheet, its website, so you can have you can find a lot of information there. I guess the same from the Bundesbank side, but you have to go to the central bank databases. And then my last doubt was, so as far as I understood, you replicated Marco's transaction market, but why are numbers different? Non-financial corporation net lending, this is positive by 9 billion, and there is negative by 14 billion. So I guess that so either there has been some change in data, which is possible because data are revised backwards, or maybe you missed something, but this is just something for you to check later. And I guess that's it. So my final comment is, since you have a very ambitious project, which is very interesting, make it simple, because then you will find it that it's more doable, and you will not find yourself overwhelmed by all this literature. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any question? 2 minutes for